Hi there, welcome to Campfire Fox Lists, where I list a few things and we talk about them. Enjoy! ActRaiser and ActRaiser 2. ActRaiser was one of those surprise sleeper hits for me back on the Super Nintendo. You either loved it or hated it, but it combined clunky and difficult side-scrolling action with an odd RTS and light SimCity building type gameplay for a weird Frankenstein of genres that worked for many. Years later, ActRaiser 2 slid under the radar towards the end of the Super Nintendo's life, and I, like many others, didn't notice it, but was excited to try it when it came across my radar. In my opinion, I hated it, because they took out all of the sim features of raising a village, freeing an oppressed region, and the magic, and made it into another generic side-scrolling action game. It still felt clunky, and it felt like there's little payoff for a lot of frustration. There are others who love this sequel and prefer its focus on fighting to the original and consider it a superior and solid entry. So go try it for yourself and see which one you like best. Concept for the PlayStation 2 and Concept Saga for the Xbox 360. Concept is the first in a series of games by Omiya Soft, originally released for the Sega Saturn. 2 expansions were released on PlayStation in 1999 and 2000 respectively. These expansions contain the original game plus additional maps. A sequel titled Concept Second was released on Dreamcast in 2001 with an expansion of its own released on the PlayStation 2 the following year. It is later marketed in North America as Concept and published by NEC Interchannel. This expanded PS2 version brings the 10 total Saturn maps into the new engine, and it's the one we're talking about today. Concept's gameplay resembles Monopoly in that players roll a die, or 2 dice with certain spells, to move around on a game board. Instead of buying the property and putting houses and hotels on it, players instead summon a creature to defend the property with cards you collect and unlock through gameplay. If an opponent lands on a property that one owns, the opponent either pays a toll, or can choose to attack the defending creature with one of their own in order to attempt to take over the property. Unlike Monopoly, this can result in one losing a piece of land after a lot of investment. There are so many different rules and board changes you could talk about it for ages. This was a personal favorite of mine, and being in North America, my first Concept, so I was very excited to hear that a sequel called Concept Saga was coming out on the Xbox 360 years later. It had a new story, 300 of the old cards rebalanced and tweaked, as well as 100 new ones, making for nearly 500 cards, and an online multiplayer and board roll customization, as well as semi-3D high-res graphics. It was a classic, if it ain't broken, don't fix it sort of situation, and it feels like a well-refined version of the past games. Give it a shot, you might get hooked. Devil Dice, PlayStation 1, and Bombastic, PlayStation 2. Devil Dice was one of those oddball puzzle games that no one noticed back on the PlayStation 1. I did cover it in an earlier video, but essentially you rolled dice around to match the number marked on the face of the dice with other ones of the same face value, and it disappeared, giving you points. There wasn't any story really, but it was an enjoyable puzzler, and it felt like a breath of fresh air in the oversaturated Tetris clone dominated genre at the time. The sequel came out on the PlayStation 2 years later, but was also severely under the radar as a hidden gem. It vastly improved the Devil Dice formula, adding extra elements, and that this time the dice explode, as well as multiplayer modes, battle modes, and even an adventure mode which acts as a story mode with boss fights. I highly recommend you seek out this hidden gem on the PlayStation 2. It's well worth your time. Draken for the Super Nintendo, and Dragon View for the Super Nintendo. Draken is also another you're really going to hate this game, or you're going to appreciate what it was for its time, sort of a thing. You control 4 different characters with a classic point-and-click style with RPG elements, alongside blocky 3D landscapes and 2D interiors. Problem is, though, you don't get to control any of your other characters save for one, and the rest you set what they do and just hope for the best. You got random encounters, a small amount of buildings to go into, and a bare basic world to explore. It also seems like you're just going from point A to point B on nearly all the quests. However, Dragon View came out some years later as a sequel, also on the Super Nintendo, and it was vastly better, even though it still used that weird first-person overworld 3D perspective from Draken. The story is fairly generic, and won't win any awards for originality, but it's very well written, and the side-scrolling sword-bashing beat-em-up gameplay is pretty spot-on and satisfying. The gameplay itself pushes for self-exploration, and that can sometimes lead to frustration for less patient players, and also features some long bouts of wondering where to go and what to do next. All in all, it's a vastly superior sequel that many didn't even give a chance due to it being such a hard-to-get title, as well as the name change. Thanks for sitting around and humoring an old fox and his tales. If you'd like more, please hit like and subscribe. And remember, nothing is more frightening than a fear you cannot name.